Okay, so since the last video, I decided to tone down the texture on the sidewalk just a little bit, and then include a little bit of an inset here for kind of a gutter. So very minor geometrical change here, and another very minor texture change here. Just swapped out the textures from the previous version and set them up to have the right diffuse channel and specular and normal and all that stuff. All right, so now we're ready to. We're going to start by putting a little bit of lighting in here, and then we'll go in, make a few final adjustments to our scene, and have it ready to look at. So let's click over to our render tab, and at first we can see we just got that light coming in really dark in this shadowed area, leaves quite a bit to be desired. So first of all, we'll go here and we'll enable global illumination, and also we're going to just turn off ambient intensity entirely. You don't need any of that casting, just kind of washed out colors onto our scene. It's just going to add a little bit of white essentially over the top, so we'll turn that off entirely. Alright, now with that ready, now we can start actually looking at the lighting. And I'm going to use the physically based sun for this. So turn on physical sun for the directional light, and then set time of day. Let's see, set this for afternoon, and I'm going to adjust my north offset here just a little bit. Kind of want to get those shadows. Get them to kind of bisect that wall. There we go. Okay, because I think we're going to put in a garage door or something here at the end of the alleyway. I think it looks a little bit nicer. Let's actually make it a little earlier in the day too, so we don't get those shadows coming up through the middle so much. Alright, so something like that I think works pretty nice. Now the other problem we're getting here is that the gradient, and if I see, let's show, I'm going to go to my GL background and choose the environment. We'll give it a second, and it'll pop up with that 4-color gradient, the real standard gradient. So the amount of light or the color of light that we're getting from the environment is just, based off of this. That's really not what we want. We want to use something better than that. So we'll use the physically based sky. So I'm going to go to my environment material, and from 4-color gradient, I'm going to choose it to physically based daylight. It's going to automatically point me at the directional light since it's the only light I have in the scene. And then we're going to get our different lighting here. Okay, you can make some tweaks and to adjust this light a little bit. I think I'm actually going to make a few changes. I'm going to make it a little bit earlier in the year. Make it end of March. And I'm going to check that north offset again. I'll make it a little bit earlier in the day since the days are shorter. And I think that works pretty well. Okay, so now we're starting to get some better light on here. Now if we want to preview what this would look like in a real-time view, we can bake out a version of this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to my mesh layer here, and I'm going to duplicate it. I'll rename that baked. Okay. And then I'm going to apply a material, which I'll call baked material or baked matte. And I do it, and it's by default obviously going to dump this over the top. And since it's in the same geometric position as our other wall, we're actually going to see it kind of fight with what's in the backdrop. That's okay though, because we're going to set up this up so we can bake from our one mesh onto the other. And actually, I'm getting a step ahead of myself. Let's back up here. And before I duplicate that, let's set up a proper UV map. So the UV map that's in here leaves a lot to be desired as far as materials go. And actually, since we're going to make a UV, I also, like I said, I want to add a garage door here at the end of the wall. So let's do that before we make our normal maps, and that will save us the time of having to rebuild our UVs, or UVs I mean rather, instead of the normal map. That will give us, we don't have to rebuild them in order to just get that in there. So I'm going to add a couple of loop slices here, and I'm just looking for something, roughly garage door width for a single car garage door. It's a thin alleyway. And then I'm also going to add another loop slice here, just a single one. And we'll set the mode to free. And I'm going to put that in about the right height for a garage door. Something about like that. Okay. Now I'm going to grab this polygon here, bevel, and just push it back a little bit. You can see I'm going to get some polygon stretching here. That's fine. We're going to fix that momentarily. So I'm going to add a material to this I'll call door. And I'm going to go down to this bottom polygon here, and I'm going to apply the sidewalk material to that. So let's go to sidewalk. Okay. And now you can see we're actually getting a problem with the texture here. That's that it's stretching around these edges and also this one here. So we're going to want to fix that. And the way that we can do that very quickly is let's go to our render view and click on that wall. And oops, open up the shader tree, click on that wall. And I'm going to choose all of these image inputs here. And I'm going to change them from planar to cubic. You can see that's wrapped them around here. You'll notice one issue though, and that's that since our x was 6.67, we'd stretched it out a bit. We need to also stretch out our z. So I'm going to put that as the same as our x, so 6.67. That way the bricks don't get distorted going around the corner. They're keeping the same size, and that'll work. This is down at the end of the alley, so we're not going to see a whole lot with that. And also the other thing let's do here quickly is if we were to do this, we would also get probably have a bit of a driveway here. So let's just grab these, drag them down a little bit. And actually, before we do that, let's back up and let's send one more loop slice here through each of these so that we can have some geometry. Let's see, let's set it here. Let's do this. Let's just go set it to uniform, so it'll put it right in the middle. Do the same thing over here. Now if I go in here and pull these down, we'll have a little bit better driveway to deal with there. And that works. We'll leave that at that. Again, we're not going to get super complex in the modeling here just because this is a pretty simple scene. And now let's drop on a kind of a garage door material here. I went and found one. Let's see here. I'll put it in there. There we go. Door. So I got a door and a bump map for that. So I'm going to take both of those and drop those into my door material. And select both of those. Go to my texture locator. It's set to UV map. Obviously, again, we want to set that back to planar. And then auto size it. And see something funny going on with the auto size. So we can adjust that by hand here. So I'm going to take this top one here. Oops. Seems like if I select it individually, it'll work a little bit better. And I'm going to put the diffuse up on top. Change the bump map to a bump map. And since that's got some nice edges on that, I'm going to turn up my bump strength. I'd also turned up the bump strength a bit on those bricks there, but let's turn up the bump strength on this door just a bit so that it gets a little bit more pop to it. Okay, I think that works. That works pretty well. Adds a little bit more interest to the geometry in our scene. Okay, so now let's go and set up a UV map for this. So I'm going to go to Lists, open up UV Maps, make a new UV map that I'll call Full Scene. Okay, and I'm going to use the UV Unwrap tool here. So I want to get and separate kind of the different planes that this scene falls into. So let's see, I want to leave all the sidewalk together with the street. That'll be fine. And then I'm going to separate the side walls from the back wall, but I'm going to leave the garage door attached on the inside there, and I think that's going to cause less distortion when I pull this apart. So let's go to the Unwrap tool, and I'm going to choose Group Normal. This will pull them apart based off of the direction that they're in. And then I'll click out here. And initially you can see it leaves a little bit to be desired, but we can clean this up relatively quickly. The two end walls, or the side walls, came out great, so we won't worry about them. But let's adjust our horizontal walls. So I'm going to select each of these pieces here for the horizontal edges on the back wall first. And I'm going to open up my scale tool, make sure negative scale is off. I'm going to set my action center to local, and then I'm going to go and reset my axis to auto. And now if I flatten those out, you can see that those got nice and even there. Oops, I need to do the same thing on this one here. Alright, that works. So now I'm going to go through and get the horizontal edges, or I guess they're vertical here on this. And again, scale, and straighten those out. Okay, so those are ready. Now I'm going to grab this guy. This needs a little bit more adjustment here, so I'm going to kind of straighten it out a little bit before I do that. Then I'm going to go again with my edges. I'm going to select all the edges all the way across here. Make sure that I got all of them. Yep, looks like we got them all there and all there. Got to check that little rounded corner that we got. Now again, scale tool. All my same settings will be active, so that will work out. Now I'm going to get this top edge, do the same thing, scale it down, and let's see here. Let's grab these edges here, and then this top edge here, on there. Let's adjust those. And then I'm going to get all these ones here in the middle. This is where we had that little inset or the little drop for the driveway. So the unwrap tool got a little confused on those, but there we go. That ought to work out pretty nicely. Alright, now what I'm going to do to arrange these is I'm going to rotate these two and move them over here to the side, so they can take up all this space along the side. Move this guy out of the way here. And I'm going to rotate this one horizontally. This way I can kind of make the most use of the space that I have. This one I'll scale up. And move to the corner. Same thing with this one. Scale it up. Kind of as much as I have vertically. And that'll work. And these guys got a little bit misaligned, so I'll go through and adjust my alignment here while I'm at it. May as well have the UVs be nice and straight. And let's get these edges. Do the same thing. Alright, so now I have a much better UV map to work with. So now, we can go back here again to our item. I'm going to duplicate this item layer. Oops, duplicate. We'll rename that. We'll call that one baked. That'll work. And on this baked one here, I'm going to apply a baked material. All right. And for now, I'm going to hide that one. And we'll see why here in a second. So I'm going to go ahead. Good idea to save here every once in a while and keep your iterations current so that you don't override any previous work if you want to go back. So now I have this ready. I have my my UV map selected, and I have my lighting here. Now, my default is to have a final color output and an alpha. Now, I don't need the alpha, so I'm going to use this slot for something else. And what I want to get here is a diffuse coefficient. And what the diffuse coefficient is, if I go here and select it, is basically the flat diffuse values across the scene. So just taking all of the diffuse maps throughout the scene and putting them out there so that there's no shading of any kind. It's all just flat as if I was looking at these images in Photoshop. So with that ready, I'm going to bake a version here that's going to have some lighting. We'll just use that kind of as a preview, and then another version that has that diffuse coefficient, and I can use that to go in and add some more details to this scene. So let's go ahead, pause here while we bake. So, well, actually here, let's set up our render first. I'm going to set my render out to, let me set it to 2K, so 2048 by 2048. And then we'll go render bake to render outputs, and this will bake each of those render outputs that I have to the UV map that I have selected. So let's do that. We'll pause and come back when they're done. Alright, so 5 minutes later, there's our image. We have our lit image and then our diffuse coefficient. I'm going to save each of these as a flat image, so I'll call this diffuse, and I'm going to put it into my baked texture folder. And then we'll go back to our final color output, save image, and we'll call this lit diffuse. Okay. Alright, so we can get a preview of what this is going to look like. Let's open up our baked texture here. We're going to go hide our regular mesh layer and bring up that flat baked one here. And let's go back here. We'll find our baked image. So lit diffuse right there. Just take that and drop it in. We'll click over to a real-time view. And just to make this a little easier to see, let's turn off all of our locators. You can hit the O key and it will bring up this kind of heads-up display. And if you click on visibility, you can turn off showing of texture locators and other locators. We'll make it a little bit easier to get an idea of what's going on in a scene. And remember, in this version, I do have the wireframes turned off as well as all of the grids so that I can get a better idea of what's going on here in the scene. So you can see all of our lighting information has gone in. And it's looking relatively nice. Now, if we want to go in and add extra details, that diffuse coefficient is a good choice to add that detail onto. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to select this lit diffuse layer, and I'm going to change that image, load image, and I'll put in the diffuse one. And it'll drop in here now without the lighting information, but this makes a really great place for us to paint textures. So I'm going to go over to the Paint tab here and make sure that you have proper layers selected. I'm going to set this back to Advanced OpenGL. And again, on this layer, I'm also going to hide those locators so that they don't get in the way as I'm painting on my details here. So I'm going to go up to my Paint Tools, Airbrush, choose a brush, and I'm going to choose Imaging. And from this, I will be able to add in an image that I choose. So I'm going to go here, load image, and I've brought into my texture folder a few pieces of extracted graffiti. So I'm going to start, let's grab this one right here, and if I click on the screen, it's going to place that image out, and I can resize it. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. I'll make this relatively large on the wall, but not too big, so something like that ought to work. And now I can right click and drag as usual to adjust my brush size. I'm also going to turn the soft border down a little bit on that so we get a little bit more solid. And I'm going to go through here and just loosely brush in this, this graffiti image. So I'm going to stay away from the edges a bit with this brush. I'm just going to use this to get in the bulk of the image. And I'll go in with a little bit rougher brush to kind of touch up and get those edges without making them overly done and get a lot of sharp transitions in there. So let's paint around here and a little bit up in here. Okay, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to choose, I'm going to go to the brush editor here and I'm going to edit this a little bit. I'm going to, let's see here, let's turn on a nozzle so that I can get a little bit more adjustment here. Oops. And I'm going to turn the jitter on. See, that's going to roughen up my brush a little bit here. So now, let's close that and make this pretty small. I'm just going to go here around the edges pretty quickly. You can see I'm getting some of that white texture in, that's okay. If I want to decrease that, I could always go back and paint over the original. When I save this image that has the graffiti put onto the UV map, I'll save it as a different name so that I can always go in and use my diffuse coefficient in Photoshop and I can paint out any of this detail that I want to. Alright, so there's that. You can see we've got some graffiti on the wall there. Okay, I can go in and add as much as I want. I'm going to add one more in right here, just a small one. So again, I'm going to go to my airbrush, and this one's going to be smaller, so I'm just going to use this procedural brush the whole time. Check my brush, turn on image ink, work, and I'm going to load in another one that I've got here. So again, I'll go in and load image and use this one right here. Again, click will bring the image up, and actually I want to use a different image. Let's see here. So load image, let's use this one. Okay, so you can see it's loaded that image in, and the image isn't going to change if I zoom in or out. So I can zoom in very close and then scale the image, and that will give me a lot more freedom to get in close to the image and be able to paint the edges with a lot of detail without it being huge on my finished rendering here. So let's go through. Just going to paint in a little bit of this using this this brush that's got the little beaten up edge. It's going to look as if this is a little bit more faded, and it's been on the wall a little bit longer and it's taken a little bit of weathering. Alright, so that ought to do it. Okay, so you can see that's kind of added some detail in. If you wanted, you could go and add things to the door, to the ground, to the sidewalk, anywhere. And this is also a good place that you can go in and you can add some more detail as far as weathering as well. So if, for example, I were to go in and once again get my brush, and I'm going to turn on image ink, and I'm going to turn my blend mode this time to multiply. I can turn my opacity down a little bit here, and with image ink I'm going to choose, I'm going to load an image, and I'm actually going to use that background concrete that I had used. Let's see, stone. I think I'll just use the regular stone, and let's kind of line up our back wall here. You can see that that image is the one that I had actually used for the side walls is dropping in, but if I paint with this now, and I'm going to get a pretty big brush, if I paint with this, it's just going to act as a multiplier over the existing work that I have here. That's probably a little bit heavy. So I'm going to get this procedural brush again, and I'm going to turn my opacity down even more, maybe somewhere around 40. Make my brush a bit bigger. And then I'll just go through here and I can brush in a little bit of additional detail. And this will help too because this image was tiled. It's tiled bricks in the background, so it's kind of nice to add something to break it up a little bit here. So you can do as much or as little with this as you want, but whatever you do will typically really add to the finished look of the scene. This will be important too on the ground. I would really recommend using some kind of water stain maps on the ground. Then you can go through onto the sidewalk and into the road and make them look a lot more worn and lived in. And then when you have all of that ready, we can click back over to our render view, and we can rebake an image now with all of our graffiti in it. So let's do that. Let's bake one more. We'll come back and finish up. Alright, so there's our final baked image on there. It's got our lighting, it has all of our texture information, it has our extra details like our wear that we've done on the bricks and our little bit of graffiti on there. So you can see that this way you can really build up a scene quickly, and you can do it in layers so that you have a lot more control over where things are placed, such as grime, wear, paint, things like graffiti and things and other things like that. You can place them quickly, you can remove them quickly by just going back to your diffuse coefficient layer and painting them on out. So hope this was a useful set of videos, that you learned something, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.